Begin with breaking news here in Washington. In the past hour, the White House has announced an additional round of tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports. And President Donald Trump has threatened additional tariffs on $267 billion worth of goods. CGTN's Owen Fairclough joining us now. Owen, President Trump has been promising this for some time, hasn't he?
Mike, if you think it's been a hot summer, then get ready for the fall. As you say, the US has now confirmed it will push ahead with additional tariffs on Chinese imports into the US on $200 billion worth of goods. That's a serious and dramatic escalation on the $50 billion worth of tariffs that are already and currently in effect. Now, these will take effect on the 24th of September, and we're looking at a sort of sliding scale on this, initially starting at 10% duties and then rising up to 25% in the new year. Those are severe tariffs on thousands of product lines, but crucially, some products have been excluded from this. Several hundred have been taken off the list, and they include Apple Watches and other Bluetooth devices. We're also talking about child seats, child bicycles as well. So you can see how the Trump administration wants to try and minimize the impact on US consumers when you consider just how many goods are made by China. But it absolutely wants to hit China where it hurts, and that includes hitting China with its Made in China 2025 strategy. So things like internet modems stay on the list, and that's because China is trying to turn itself into a world beater in high-tech products. Mike.
And Owen, yet even before this announcement, Trump's own officials were talking about negotiations with China to resolve this trade war. Can those still go forward?
You can certainly understand the confusion, Mike. Just last week, we were being told that potentially a Chinese delegation would be invited to Washington to try and resume talks aimed at resolving that trade war, and yet this has to antagonize China. It was interesting to hear senior administration officials here in Washington briefing on this and saying they don't really want to hurt China. They don't want to stop it from growing. They simply want to right the playing field. They say that China uses unfair trade practices to try to harm the US. Well, there were reports of this announcement kicking around over the weekend. So earlier this Monday, China's foreign ministry came out firing and said it will retaliate if the Trump administration pushed ahead with those tariffs.
If the U.S. announces any new tariffs on Chinese goods, China will have to take necessary countermeasures to defend its own legitimate rights and interests. Second, the escalation of trade tensions is not in the interests of either side. Our position on trade issues is consistent. Dialogue and negotiations based on equality, mutual trust, and mutual respect is the only right way to resolve trade disputes.
Well, we'll see about that, Mike. As you mentioned, there might even be more tariffs to come in all of this. Potentially tariffs on another $267 billion worth of Chinese imports into the US. If the US does that, we're talking about a giant tax on pretty much all of the goods that China sends to the United States. So you can understand why there are leading economists saying if it goes that far, this could dampen global growth. Mike.